The dust hadn't settled yet. A stuntman lay flat in the dirt of a studio backlit, refusing to get up. Not because he was hurt, but because he wanted everyone watching to know he wasn't taking the order. 60 feet away, a man in a faded denim jacket stood completely still, his hat low, his hands loose at his sides. Nobody on that set moved. This is that story. It was a Tuesday afternoon on a western backlit built to look like a frontier town. False front saloons, a dry water trough, a sky scrubbed pale by the heat. The air smelled like horse sweat, sawdust, and the particular burnt rubber tang of generator cable baking in the sun. Crew members leaned against C-stands, fanning themselves with call sheets. A boom operator wiped his palms on his jeans every few minutes, the heat making the grip slick. Somewhere off camera, a wrangler kept 3 horses calm with low, steady talk, the animals shifting their weight, flicking flies with their tails. The stuntman at the center of it, call him Earl, 34 years old, 11 years in the business, 206 stunts on his resume by his own count. The kind of count men in his line of work kept like a soldier counts campaigns, had built a reputation as the best fall man in 3 counties. He'd taken horse drags, wagon rolls, and a 40-foot rooftop tumble that still got mentioned in commissary conversations. He stood 6'1", broad through the shoulders, a man who had survived enough falls to believe he understood risk better than the people who wrote the scripts. That belief, more than anything, was the reason for what happened next. The scene called for a simple beat. Earl's character gets thrown from a horse during a chase, rolls twice, and comes up reaching for a fallen rifle. Routine work. But the horse assigned that day, a 17-hand gelding named Tucker, normally even-tempered, had been spooked twice already by a generator backfire, and the wrangler had quietly flagged it to the assistant director. Earl hadn't been told. Or he had been told and decided it didn't matter. Accounts differed even at the time, and that gap is part of what made the day memorable. The man in the denim jacket, the one nobody had spoken to yet, was John Wayne, dressed not for camera, but for a meeting with the production office that had run long. He'd walked onto the set during a break, still wearing his street clothes, his collar open, a coffee cup in one hand that he hadn't touched in 20 minutes. He didn't announce himself. He never did. He stood near base camp, watching the rehearsal the way a man watches weather. Not interfering, just reading what was coming. What made people underestimate him in moments like this wasn't his size. At 6'4" and 220 pounds, he was hard to overlook physically. It was his stillness. Men who didn't know him assumed the quiet meant disengagement, that the famous calm was for the cameras and nowhere else. Earl, focused on his own rehearsal, hadn't even registered that Wayne was within 40 yards. The assistant director called for a rehearsal pass at half speed. No camera rolling, just to check Tucker's reaction to the staged gunfire. Earl waved him off. "Full speed or it's not gonna read right," he said, loud enough for the nearby crew to hear. The AD hesitated, glanced toward the wrangler, who was already shaking his head. Earl didn't wait for the argument to finish. He nodded to the horse handler, who reluctantly signaled the stunt to proceed at full pace, against the direction he'd just been given. Wayne watched the exchange without a word. He had been a working actor on westerns long enough to know horses, to know fall men, to know the particular arrogance that came from surviving 200 stunts and starting to believe survival was a skill rather than partly luck. He set his coffee cup down on a nearby apple box. That was the only signal he gave. The shot proceeded. Tucker bolted at the gunfire cue exactly as the wrangler feared, cutting sideways instead of running straight, throwing Earl off balance a half-second early. Earl's fall, planned as a controlled roll, became something else. His shoulder caught the ground wrong, his head snapped back, and he came to a stop 10 feet short of his mark, not moving for a long 3 count. The set went rigid. Someone yelled to cut, though no camera had been rolling. A script supervisor dropped her clipboard. But here's where it changes. Earl pushed himself up on one arm, shook his head once, and, instead of signaling he was fine, instead of walking it off the way professionals do, he stayed down. Deliberately. He turned his face toward the AD and said, loud enough for 30 people to hear, "You don't get to tell me how to do my job." Then he said it again, this time toward Wayne, though without looking at him directly. And neither does anybody standing around watching. The insult was aimed sideways, but everyone present understood exactly where it landed. The crowd, maybe 40 crew and cast members by that point, went quiet in the particular way film sets go quiet. Not silence exactly, but a held breath, machines still running, nobody speaking. A producer named Hal Reardon started forward, hands already lifting in the universal gesture of de-escalation, words half-formed. He didn't get 3 steps before Wayne moved past him, not fast, not slow, just present. John Wayne never spoke first in moments like this. He walked the 40 yards at a pace that didn't quicken, stopped about 6 feet from where Earl was sitting in the dirt, and waited. Not glaring, not posturing, just waiting, his weight settled evenly, his hands still loose at his sides, his eyes steady on Earl without blinking the way other men blink when they're deciding what to say next. Earl got to his feet slowly, testing his shoulder, and squared up the way a man does when he's decided a confrontation is inevitable and would rather have it standing. "You got something to say it," Earl told him. "Or are you just here to watch like everybody else?" Wayne didn't answer the bait. He glanced once at Tucker, still being walked in a slow circle by the wrangler to calm down, lathered and blowing hard. Then he looked back at Earl. "Horse told you twice," he said. 5 words. Nothing more. The urgency in the air sharpened. Reardon tried again. "Gentlemen, let's just take 5, get the medic to look at." But neither man acknowledged him. Earl took a step closer, close enough now that the height difference registered visibly to everyone watching, Wayne's frame a half-head taller and considerably wider through the chest despite Earl's own size. "I've done 206 stunts," Earl said. "I know more about falling than anybody on this lot." In the first second, Wayne's expression didn't change. In the second second, he shifted his weight slightly onto his back foot. A horseman's instinct, the kind a man learns from decades around animals that might bolt, might charge, might do something unpredictable in a heartbeat. In the third second, Earl's hand came up. Not a punch, but a shove, palm flat against Wayne's chest, the kind of contact meant to provoke rather than injure, the kind that says back off without committing to violence. In the fourth second, Wayne caught Earl's wrist, not violently, not with a strike, simply closing his hand around it the way a man closes a hand around a rope that's about to run out, and redirected the momentum of the shove sideways, using Earl's own forward weight rather than adding force of his own. In the fifth second, Earl's balance, already compromised by the shoulder he'd just landed on, went out from under him, and his back met the side of the nearby chuckwagon set piece. Not thrown, not slammed, but guided there with the precision of a man who understood leverage better than he understood anger. The wood groaned under the impact. 40 people didn't make a sound. Earl stayed there a moment, pinned by nothing but his own off-balance weight against the wagon, blinking up at the sky, breathing hard. Not from pain, from realization. The realization that the man in front of him hadn't thrown a single punch, hadn't raised his voice, hadn't done anything that could be called an attack. And yet here he was anyway, exactly where Wayne had decided he would end up. Wayne stepped back. He always stepped back. He retrieved his coffee cup from the apple box, found it had gone cold, and set it down again without drinking from it. The silence held for 5 full seconds before the wrangler finally exhaled, loud enough that a few people laughed nervously, the tension breaking like a held breath finally released. Reardon, to his credit, didn't say anything about safety protocols or insurance liability, not yet. He just looked at Earl, still catching his breath against the wagon, and said quietly, "You all right?" Earl nodded, though something in his face had changed. Not embarrassment exactly, something closer to recalculation. He pushed off the wagon and walked toward Wayne, who hadn't moved from where he stood. What followed happened away from the main crowd, near the horse trailers, where only the wrangler and the script supervisor were close enough to hear. Wayne didn't lecture him. He didn't bring up the stunt count, the horse, or the shove. He said one thing. "Horse already told you what was going to happen. You didn't listen to him. Don't matter how many falls you got behind you if you stop listening to what's right in front of you." Earl was quiet for a long moment. 206 stunts. 11 years on Western sets. And it took a 5-word sentence from a man holding a cold coffee cup to make him hear something he'd apparently never let himself hear before. "Nobody's told me that straight in 11 years, he finally said. Wayne extended his hand. Earl shook it. Nothing more was said, but something had shifted between them. Not victory and defeat, but recognition. 2 professionals who suddenly understood each other in a way that hadn't existed an hour earlier. Years later, as the story is sometimes told, Earl became known on backlots not for his stunt count, but for the way he ran rehearsals. Slower, more careful. Always asking the wranglers twice before a horse went near gunfire. Younger stuntmen who worked under him say he had one rule above all others. Listen to the animal before you listen to your own reputation. He'd passed that line along without ever explaining where it came from. And the men who later asked him about it say he'd just shake his head and change the subject. He answers the question the frozen moment first asked. What does it take to make a man who trusted his own survival instincts above everyone else's stop and actually listen? Not a punch. Not a lecture. 5 quiet words from someone who'd already decided not to need to prove anything. One decision. One horse nobody listened to. One lesson that outlasted 200 stunts and 11 years of certainty. But there's another version of this story. One where the horse wasn't the only thing nobody listened to that day, and the reason why is a story for another time.